I'm the kind of person who has a lot of difficulty finishing music projects. So I have a big folder of stuff that was never finished. And I have the same problem with mixes. I'm not satisfied with my mixes, and so I'm always searching for a magic plugin that's going to solve all my problems. Now recently I did a video which was about helping you find all the instruments on your computer and getting the most out of them, and that's a good thing. But ultimately what we want to do is to express ourselves through music. Well, I mean, none of that really matters if we find our instruments, if we don't put them together to make some music with them. So I've been thinking about a lot of stuff, and I've come up with a few things, and they're working for me, so maybe they'll work for you too. In my career as a movie publicist, I worked on a film called The Mosquito Coast. And the director of the film, Peter Weir, and the cameraman, John Seal, had a rule, the K.I.S.S rule, which meant keep it simple, stupid. And every time they would set up a shot, and Peter would always ask, is this simple? Because they didn't want to do any composition that was show-offy or was just too fancy or doing something to make themselves look great, and they didn't want to move the camera if the camera didn't need to be moved. They wanted that kind of spare technique. And I think that's actually a good rule for us to work with, keeping things simple. I mean, think about Prince with When Doves Fly. That song has no bass track. And it's not that they didn't record a bass track, it was the 80s after all. But he listened to it without the bass track and he said, this is more interesting. So they left it out. So if it doesn't need to be there, then there's no point in putting it in. I don't know how you do it, but the way I write music is to start with a melody. Something just comes to my head, and then I get to a guitar or a piano keyboard and I work out a chord progression to go with it. And you may do it a different way, but I think any approach is fine. But after I've done that, I have the question, well, how am I going to orchestrate this? I mean, what instruments am I going to use? What style am I going to use? And I did a video some time ago on a program called Band in a Box. I'll link to that. And using that program, I throw all my chords in there for a song, and the program would generate arrangements in various styles. And I'd listen to all that and I'd just go, this is the one I like the best. And then I'd use that as a guide for the music that I ultimately made. But it occurs to me, wouldn't it be better if I was the kind of musician who knew how to orchestrate stuff, who knew what his music was going to be before he started? But that's kind of a paralyzing notion because I have so much stuff. So then I thought, what if I orchestrated the music before I wrote a single note? Just choose a bunch of instruments and call it your palette and say, all right, I've got these instruments. And to keep it simple, I'm going to say 6 instruments, totally arbitrary, but I'm just going to say 6. And here are these 6 instruments. And today, I'm going to make some music with these 6 instruments. Maybe it'll be fun. We'll see what happens. What if, when you're putting your 6-piece band together, you started with something very low and then had an instrument that was very high and everything was in the middle, and you're trying as much as possible to not have the note ranges overlap. And it wouldn't matter if they overlapped as long as you didn't have the same instrument in that note range playing as the others. Now that's very kind of natural way of thinking when you have a string quartet or a rock band or a jazz quartet or whatever. They are all set up in that simple way, so they don't step over each other. One of the other things I think you have to do is to figure out who is the Mick Jagger in your arrangement, because the Mick Jagger is always going to be out front and everybody else is going to be the band. And there can be lots of Mick Jaggers in a piece of music. So, for example, in Gimme Shelter, there are 4 Mick Jaggers. Mick Jagger himself sings through most of it, and then Keith Richards is the Mick Jagger during the wonderful intro and during his guitar solo. Mary Clayton has 2 choruses. She sings through a lot of the song, but always backup, always with Mick. And then Mick himself is the 4th Mick Jagger because he plays harmonica in it. And in all those cases, the band pulls back when there's a lead musician. It seems to me that if you can play music live, if you imagine playing music live, and it will sound good without major surgery in the mix, if that can be done, then you could also compose music that would be good sounding without major surgery in the mix. We're all very familiar with the way songs are constructed, with verses, chorus, and middle part. But songs have lyrics. So that structure doesn't necessarily work when you don't have lyrics. The lyrics can tell a story, or at least provide some kind of simple message. But if we just have pure music without any lyrics, you don't get that. So how do we provide the kind of satisfying experience that takes the listener from here to there and ends at a good place without having lyrics? Well, I think a good place to start is with classical storytelling, which is beginning, middle, and end, 3 parts, like a 3-act play, or most Hollywood movies are constructed that way. That's the way all the screenwriting books are done. In music, it's called ternary form, and you have the sonata, which is set up on 3s. I know what you're probably thinking, the symphony is 4s, but within the symphony you have these 4 movements, and when I listen to some of these movements, I hear 3 parts. So it's not the only way to structure music, certainly not, but if you're trying to keep something simple, and that's what this video is all about, keeping things simple, then I think working in 3 parts is not a bad idea. I'm going to try and demonstrate what I'm talking about with a little piece of music, and so let's go to that now. Here are my 6 instruments. The main Mick Jagger is an Egyptian singer-songwriter named Hayat Salim. She is the vocalist on a new library from Sonoscore called Vocal Ethnic Phrases. So when she sings in my piece, she is always out front. Generally what's going on is she trades solos. I might add that all the Sonoscore phrase libraries are set up in 3s, beginnings, middles, and ends of phrases. If you're interested in seeing how these phrase libraries work, Sonoscore has a freebie, Ethnic Flute Phrases, where you can play with the idea. It's a simple interface that is easy to understand and use. I'm taking all of my other 5 instruments from the Native Instruments Discovery Series Middle East. 2 percussion instruments, a daf and a frame drum, 2 solo melodic instruments, a qanun and a kemenche, and Middle Eastern string ensemble. Well, I happen to own a lot of Middle Eastern instrument libraries. Having the same interface for all 5 keeps things simple. Plus, I really love the sound of Native Instruments Discovery Series. So this is the blueprint for my song. Here are the 3 acts, 1, 2, and 3. Each one is separated by a 1-bar musical interlude that bridge from one to the next. It starts with Hayat singing alone.
أنت يا مسافر تارك الوطن.
And then just the daf comes in for the rest of the first part.
عرقك لم يهدر.
The daf is a very large handheld frame drum. You play it as a drum, or you can use various techniques to play the metal rings that are inside. In the Middle East, you can go to a concert and just hear a daf or a stage full of daf players. So it's a really extraordinary instrument. If this piece becomes anything any good, it will be totally about the little variations in the way the daf and other instruments are played. But if you look here, I have one plain vanilla daf pattern playing through the whole thing. Once the piece is plotted out, then the fun will begin, and I can try and start to make variations that will make the daf sound musical. But this placeholder pattern is all I need to start out with. There are 12 songs or construction kits in vocal ethnic phrases. So I just chose one, and using 4 phrases, a beginning, 2 middles, and an end, and I made some kind of melodic motif for the first part. This is my motif that I'll return to at the end.
أنت يا مسافر تارك الوطن. عرقك لم يهدر. لم يغرك مال. اشتاق لك الوطن. عود يا شجاع. اذهب إلى مجدك ومجد البلاد.
If I was really doing this, I would have her do it a few times. I'd have her repeat it to really nail in the idea of this being the motif. But this is only a demonstration, so you have to trust me on that one. In the break, you'll hear the qanun and the kemenche for the first time. The qanun will become the only melodic instrument that consistently plays under Hayat. As you can see, the qanun is a plucked instrument that's held on the lap. As with the daf, there's only one placeholder of one qanun pattern throughout the song at this point. For this little musical interlude, I cut out the daf and put in the frame drum just to make it sound a little different. This simple middle is just Hayat singing different phrases and trading off with the strings. Obviously, a middle section like this could go on and on by adding instruments in different combinations or just adding instruments altogether. I'm not wedded to a total of 6 instruments. I'm just wedded to keeping it simple. So if I needed to have her trade off with an oud or a duduk, I would do it. And then there's another break, but this time I have the daf and the frame drum play at the same time. If you look at the end, I repeat the phrases from part 1, They're just spread out because Hayat is trading phrases with the Comanche. And that's a 3-string instrument, like a little fiddle. It almost sounds bluegrassy. In the middle of a phrase at the end, the kanun drops out and the piece finishes on the daf. So the piece starts with Hayat singing a cappella and ends quietly as well. So I'm all set up now to put variations of the instruments and finish the song. Let's see what I come up with.
أنت يا مسافر تارك الوطن عرقك لم يهدر لم يغرك مال اشتاق لك الوطن عود يا شجاع اذهب إلى مجدك ومجد
For this experiment, I added no EQ or effects of any kind. I did bring up the volume on the other instruments when Hayat Salim wasn't singing. It definitely could benefit from more work, but my point is that the piece was constructed so that note ranges don't overlap, and I think that saves time later on. And the 3-part structure makes it feel to me like a whole piece, not a fragment. There are really infinite ways that you can use a 3-part structure in writing music. I mean, you can make the intro as long as you want, the middle as long as you want, or as short as you want. It's really up to the music that you're making and what it needs. But I think for me, it's really good for me to have this 3-part structure as a map. So I always know where I'm starting, where I'm going, and where I'm going to end up. And I feel that even if the music I make is not genius, which it won't be, it will be well crafted. There will be a logic to the way it's being put together, and it won't be just that I create something in A minor, repeat it a dozen times, and then fade out. There'll be motion, there'll be movement, there'll be progression. I hope that the ideas in this video are of some interest to you and that maybe you can put them to use in your own music. Thanks for listening. This is Tiger the Frog, reminding you, as I always do, that when you buy music software, buy responsibly.
Hello YouTubers, my name is K.I.S. I'm a good friend of Tiger's. He is too shy to talk about this, so I'm going to speak for him. The YouTube algorithm tracks numbers of subscribers, comments, thumbs up, number of seconds each video is viewed. The algorithm totals all that stuff up and decides everything Tiger does should go to the bottom of a trash can. But if you take a few seconds to engage, you can help him reach a wider audience. Thank you. And Happy New Year.